Boom, guys. What's up? This is the McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, as always, Coleman McAllister. Got a super solo episode here today. Before we start, make sure if you're not already to like and subscribe the podcast. We're on all platforms, including the ones you are watching live now, if you are. And if you guys got any questions, we'll try to get to them in the chat. Feel free to post them, again, for those watching live. And, I guess this is kind of like asking for prayer, even though I don't do that. I'm not doing that at all. But just cross your fingers for me. Cross your fingers for me that this doesn't fucking crash. Because my computer's been on the fritz lately, and I feel like every time I go live now, the risk for that has increased by, 25%. So please do that for me. Cross your fingers. Hope this works out, and if it doesn't, we'll just re-upload the episode, I guess. Okay. A couple different things to talk about. I haven't really done a podcast in a while. It's been kind of a crazy week, personally, because this isn't my full-time job. I have other things going on in my life, and sometimes it takes precedent, and that's unfortunate, but that's how it is. So there's a lot to catch up on, but I think the main thing that I wanted to talk about today is this hearing with Dr. Anthony Fauci. Science Anthony Fauci. And I don't even necessarily want to get into like a whole like scientific thing or like really even like a political thing with this, because we're gonna just watch his opening statements, and I'm sure plenty of people have already seen this at length. The series of questions he has asked, and him just giving the, lawyer written reply. I have my right to I don't even know exactly what he says, but like, I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right, and to not ask questions, or to answer questions, I should say. So I didn't want to, there are plenty of other people who are doing that well, and I want to, let them do that, and I want to regurgitate that. I kind of wanted to just, there's a reason I titled the episode the way it is. I kind of wanted to just take this and kind of just, spew out some of my anger around this entire topic, because, I've done it here and there in the past, kind of giving my rants and my spiels about, why COVID was so bad and such a bad time, not just for everybody, but for me personally. Even though, oddly enough, I quit smoking cigarettes in that time, which was really kind of a bizarre, because I will say, I was lucky in a sense, because I was still an essential worker. I was a cleaner. And my job at the time was not something where I interacted with people. I went after hours to these businesses and cleaned. So, I wasn't subject to when I was in public, I definitely had to still wear the mask and all that. But, it wasn't really something I was required to at my job. My boss at the time was, it was a private, smaller company. So my boss at the time was definitely not one of those people who was like, you need to be vaccinated, XYZ, right? So I think that was really helpful to me. But, there were still a lot of personal things that affected me. And I don't think, I don't really think I've talked about it in depth. And I really think doing that today might, help people, because I've talked to other people who have experienced really similar things. And I think reminding people, talking about it is important, because, it's kind of something that it happened. It was this really big thing. It really affected and honestly destroyed a lot of lives. And once it ended, we kind of from the government or the federal government perspective, we went right into Ukraine. And, I think a lot of the public and a lot of the people didn't really have time to process this. And I think, although this whole thing with Fauci, it kind of reopened some wounds in a way, I think it's also a little, it's gratifying in a way. It is gratifying to to see this man put on display. I mean, even though he took the coward's way out in a sense, and I mean, we'll see. I mean, I've seen things today where they've scrutinized because his Fifth Amendment invoking that in some areas doesn't necessarily go with or go in congruence to his pardon, which that was like a whole. I remember when that happened, it was like Biden. I'm pretty sure it was Biden. It must have been Biden. On the way out, just giving Fauci a pardon. It was like, oh my God, that was just so egregious. That just let you know that something. I mean, of all the things that let you know something was up, that was one of the biggest, right? And so we'll watch this clip, but it's just a minute, or it's just like a minute and a half. His opening speech before the hearing, which he doesn't answer a single question. He just says that he's using his Fifth Amendment right. But I mean, I guess my point is that he isn't going to, if this world worked justly, this man would sit in a cell and die of old age, right? Like, and starve. I mean, I don't even know starve. Like, I maybe feed him and let him suffer in a cell, right? Like if we were to like play, the morality game, the just morality game, like, yeah, there's probably a pretty good argument for that, for what this man did. But I think the honest thing, the honest interpretation is that he's not going to face consequences. These government officials never do. Fauci is worth, I think I saw something around $12 million, probably more than that. At the time, I heard this today too. At the time, during COVID, was the highest paid federal employee. At the very least, he's going to have lawyers. He's going to have ways to maneuver the system because the system favors the elite every time. But anyways, let's just get into this. Let's just watch this. And, I've seen some people break this down, but there's one thing that to me at least was really vividly I'm surprised people haven't picked up on this part. So let's just watch this.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote.
Okay, let's just pause there off the bat. So this is a really disingenuous way to frame what's happening to him. This is on the level, if I was a murderer, if I committed a crime, right, and the police and investigators showed up to my door and, they were constantly trying to get a hold of me and constantly trying to contact me. And my response was, these cops and they're obsessed with me. There's some obsession with me. What is going, why are these people so obsessed with me? And that's not what's happening. First of all, it's kind of understandable that people would have an obsession with Dr. Fauci because of the insanely detrimental impact that he had not only on the country, but the world. When you look at, him being involved in the funding of the Wuhan lab and all that, or involved in that whole thing, not only on that aspect, but, then in the United States, giving guidelines and instituting things that really negatively affected people. So, if you, Germans or Jewish people being obsessed with Hitler, or is that how you would put it? If someone did a really bad thing and you're going to frame it as like, oh, these people are obsessed with me. That's just really disingenuous. Also, I think it's funny that like he frames in this way where it's like they're trying to get a gotcha. Like they're putting me in this position so they can do a gotcha on me. They released my diary, which has like some really incriminating and damning, evidence. They're putting this out in order to like, make me slip up or make me say something that could, make me culpable for a crime. And it's kind of like the old adage, like, if you have nothing to hide, then like this shouldn't be a concern to you. If if you didn't do anything wrong, this shouldn't be a concern, right? Like if you're accused of a crime and you didn't do it, you should have no problem being like, hey, yeah, I'll comply. Like, look at my shit. Like I did not do this. Now, yeah, I guess like with government involvement, there could be, framing or like, tampering with evidence that could, like, I get that angle, but the thing is, like, this is a government official. This is a government official that had a pardon that's worth millions of dollars. This is not like, a traffic stop where a cop plants a baggie of coke in a black guy's, glove compartment, and he's like, okay, well, now we're gonna. It's not like that at all. This is a complete different scenario. But of course, he's gonna frame it like this to make himself look good. So, anyways, let's continue here.
Quote, any reasonable person who has followed his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll stop it there. But guys, because he has so much respect for government, because he loves the system. Of course he loves the system. Because he loves the system so much, he's not going to comply with the system. He's going to actually maneuver around it in order for what government is ideally supposed to do. He's going to allow that. He's not going to allow that to happen. He's going to intentionally maneuver around it because he loves it so much. This just goes to show the type of man Anthony Fauci is. And this is who he was. I mean, throughout his whole career, someone who is very comfortable lying to your face and doing it in a way that it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. What could you possibly accuse me of? What could I have possibly done wrong here? And it's disgusting. It really is. I mean, I think of all, there's a lot of things about Biden, for instance, or even Trump, like throughout their career that have been really disgusting. The way they've lied as well. But there's something particular about Anthony Fauci because, like someone like Trump's an asshole, and Trump owns that he's an asshole for better or worse, right? Now in the Iran war, probably not for the best, but like there were times where like even, after being a Trump supporter, I was like, okay, like I kind of get the appeal of this. Like he's just saying, fuck you. I don't care. We're going to do the right thing. And then obviously when they start doing the wrong thing, then it's problematic. But that all aside, I think there's something more disingenuous and more infuriating about someone like Dr. Fauci and his lying and what he did throughout his career, where it's literally, it's both, I'm the good guy, I'm doing the right thing, when now as clear as day, we know that wasn't the case. I'm going to profit off that system. I'm going to protect myself from, he was literally a part of what created this in the first place. And then he, instead of like fessing up to that or facing consequences, he doubled down on that. And not only didn't take consequences for that, but then created restrictions and guidelines that were way overblown, were unnecessary, and ruined people's lives. It's like a double tap in a sense, right? Like, this man really did one of the fucking scummiest things ever. And look, I mean, something that people don't remember. I don't know who saw the movie Dallas Buyers Club. Fantastic film, one of my favorites. In that movie, there is a drug called AZT that is given to people with AIDS, or people with HIV and AIDS. And it's promoted as this thing that's like really helping them, and really like it really, revolutionary technology. And, you watch that movie and you're like, this is eerily similar to someone. And it actually did it, like in the AZT instance, it actually did the opposite. It actually made people more susceptible to death and shortened their lifespans. And it was a disastrous thing that happened in this country. You're not going to guess. Guess who was the culprit behind that? Literally the same guy, Dr. Fauci. Literally the same guy that was behind the COVID stuff was also behind that. So there's probably never been a point in this man's life where he's been not only a good person, but like a genuine and like, making good decisions in his position. Like, this is just like the fraudiest of frauds. Like, it's insane to me. And then he got pardoned, which is, I mean, look, like, me being like a libertarian and an anarcho-capitalist, like, these kind of things were like a direct result or a direct part of why I became that, why I became radicalized. I did become radicalized during COVID. A lot of people became radicalized during COVID. Because it was a terrible fucking thing. It was awful. It really just, we thought we lived in a free country. Up to that point, I was convinced like there's at least, some freedom that the people have. There's like this system can still work for the people. Like, I naively thought that. And then COVID came. And we were all, had things forced upon us totalitarianly, in a way that was, draconian and like Orwellian. Telling people that you can't work, telling people that you have to wear masks. You have, like, in some places, well, actually, I don't know if I don't think there was any government requirement for the vaccines. But they did impose a lot of restrictions. Like, in essence, that was what happened, because like you couldn't go to restaurants, you couldn't go to in some places you couldn't go to all these places because you didn't have a vaccine card. I mean, this is literally the equivalent of Germany saying, okay, Jews, you need to get the star, and you need to identify yourselves. Like, people think I'm being, I'm exaggerating or being hyperbolic with that, but like, if you look at it logically, that's literally what happened. And like, look, man, I look back on COVID, and I look back on the craziness of that time, because amongst all this happening, you really saw like I think this was the period you really saw the ugly side of wokeism, leftism. And there were a lot of people in my life that completely, ostracized me. I lost multiple friends during that time period. Like, multiple people in my life just completely cut me out because I refused to get a vaccine. And I was somebody like, in the first like probably 2 to 4 weeks, I was terrified. Like, I fucking drank the Kool-Aid, and I was masking up. I was like, this was like something out of a fucking horror movie for me. I was like, goddamn, like, this is like some sci-fi shit. What the fuck's going on? This is like, and that's how they painted it, right? This was the the neurovirus that was like gonna zombify people, like all that shit, right? Like all that sci-fi shit, like that all like went through my head, and I was like, oh my God, like this could really be the end of times. Like I was terrified of this shit. And then, you know, it kind of like came out later on that, okay, this actually isn't, like, there were sources of people who were like kind of, you know, like this isn't really that bad. And then this vaccine, and so, you know, there were people like I had this one friend who got exposed. Like, okay, so like she and another friend masked up outside, went to a park. She somehow still got it, and then she was like hanging out with me while she found out that the friend had it, and she was like insisting that I get tested, and I was just like, no, like I'm not gonna do. I don't know why. I think at the time it was just a lot, and it was just really difficult. But like, I just kind of I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do this. And then we got into the arguments about the vaccine. It hadn't even been out yet, but like, you know, it was obviously in development. And I was just like, yeah, you know, like I don't trust this thing. I don't trust the government. I don't trust them to, you know, actually put out a good product. And, you know, in history, like, or, you know, we can see evidence in front of us that like there was vaccine injuries. I still to this day get into arguments with people about like, you know, how they will literally tell you to your face that all vaccines are safe and effective. And, you know, pre-COVID, this wasn't even a controversial position. There was an entire, I don't remember what it's called, but like there's an entire like vaccine injury report that you can make, and like people have made those. Like this isn't like historically vaccines have injured people. Like this isn't even a controversial position. This is just a fact. And people just ignore that. Like I literally, there was this group I was in, and I posted this link. I think it's called Follow the Silenced. Highly recommend it. But it was this documentary that like followed several different people who, you know, their children or just them themselves like got the vaccine, and they, you know, they had some really fucked up shit happen to them. We had a guest on the podcast back in the day, not Jacob Winograd. Or Jacob the Freak, there we go. And he talked about like how he got the Johnson & Johnson and it fucked his shit up. Like he was like sick for days. And I just heard so many bad things about this. And I guess that was after this whole thing with his friend. But like, you know, as time went on, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. Like I'm going to need to see long-term evidence to show that this is like actually a thing. And then you also have to factor in like, you know, am I really going to trust this government to be able to do this properly? Like, no, I'm not. So, you know, so all this was the stage set. And you know, you also have to factor in like this, like I tell people this to this day, and they just like, they either like let it fly over their head or they don't acknowledge it. Like this isn't even a vaccine. This is mRNA technology that from what I understand, I could be wrong, but from what I understand, from hearing like from Robert Malone, several podcasts with him where he like discussed this in detail. He was the one that created the vaccine, the quote unquote vaccine. mRNA technology is not the same as like a, you know, typical vaccine where, you know, what you're essentially injected with the dead cells of the virus, and then your body learns to combat that. And that's not what this vaccine was. It quote unquote vaccine was. It was mRNA technology, which means that it genetically recoded you essentially. Recoded your DNA. In ideally a way to be able to fight the virus. So this isn't even a vaccine. So let's get this clear. People are mad about you not getting a vaccine, like acting like this is polio, and you're not getting a vaccine in order to prevent other people, like children or whatever, from getting polio. This is how they're framing it. But that isn't even what that is. This is not a vaccine. This is completely new technology. This is untested technology. This isn't something that we fully understand the ramifications of. And look, I was lucky. Like, you know, if my job had forced me to do it, I probably would have gotten it. But I was lucky as to where, I did not have to do that. And even before it came out, I would get into discussions with people, family. They would ask me constantly, are you getting the vaccine? I would just say, no, I'm not. I would tell them to their face, like, I wasn't going to act like I was. I wasn't going to, just go along with the group. I've never been that type of person. That's just who I am. And I definitely wasn't going to do that on this. And I had relatives, I had friends, people I knew. I had a time where two of my family members literally cornered me, had me, there was like something that we had to do, literally cornered me and yelled in my face, telling me how big of a piece of shit I was for not getting vaccinated. And I experienced this to varying degrees. And I know a lot of other people who had similar things happen where they had family get upset with them about it. They had they lost friends, relationships broke up over this thing. And because there was a side there were two sides of the aisle, right? There was the side of the aisle that did the you're killing grandma thing. The leftists who were like all they care about is like people being happy and safe and whatever. And then there's the other side of the aisle, which was like, hey, I don't trust this shit. I don't trust this government shit. I don't want to risk myself to this. And, I remember people would make the argument that like, people have a right to go out into the world and feel safe. And that's honestly fucking ridiculous. It's a ridiculous proposition that would be something that's reasonable. Like this worldview that like people deserve to be safe. Like, no, nobody deserves anything. Like we are all humans living in this world, and we have, varying degrees of ability to be able to go out into this world, and that's it. And like ultimately at the end of the day, like you have a choice as to whether you want to leave your house or not. You don't get to just authoritarianly control the entire world to mold around and fit your worldview and your choices or whatever. And I just say all this, it's really upsetting because I know, and I've grappled with this for years, and I've waited for years for one fucking person to come up to me and say, hey, Coleman, I really treated you like shit during those years, and I apologize. It wouldn't even have to be much. You wouldn't even have to say like you're right. As much as I would love somebody to tell me that, I love people telling me that, right? It wouldn't even have to be something like that. It would just have to be like, hey, you know what? I treated you like shit, and I'm really sorry. Because there are times in my life where I've treated people like shit. And I've always tried to rectify that, even if it's years later. I remember in high school, I was like, I had a hard time with dating and with women and with self-esteem. And I did some really shitty things in those days. And I really regret them to this day. And like, it would be years later and I would like be shooting a message like, hey, I think about how I acted during that time and I feel awful about it. And I just want to apologize. And not expecting anything from that, not expecting some kind of gratification or whatever, just honestly saying like, I really fucked up and I'm really sorry. I feel awful about this. And, even after apologizing, feeling awful about this. These people who, shame people for not getting vaccinated, were willing to completely ostracize people from their lives, treat people like shit for making a personal choice. We will never receive an apology from those people, ever. It's been 4 or 5 years at this point since the COVID madness really ended. I mean, it never ended, fuck, I was in the store today and I saw a guy with a mask, not even, the crazy thing, he wasn't even wearing, he just had it on his chin. I'm like, we're back to that shit. We're like, the people, there was like all these people who were like half-assed, like, trying to do it. Like they're like, hey, like I'm going to like dangle in my ear and say like, hey, I'm with you, but I'm not really with you. You know what I mean? It's fucking funny, but not funny. I thought about this today too. I remember one time during COVID, I was walking down the street, and I think it was at the time where restaurants and bars were open, but you had to be masked and had to do all that stuff. Like I think there might have been I remember you had to use disposable utensils, which I can't imagine the waste that produced. But I think they also had like those shield guards up, whatever. Anyways, these people were outside. They were, eating without their masks. I think the thing was like, if you were at your table, you could take your mask off, obviously, because you have to eat. And I saw it was these two ladies. One of them pulled out their phone and they went in to take a selfie, to take a picture with each other. They both put on their masks, took a picture, and then immediately when they did that, just took the mask right back off. And just continue about their day. And it was clear from the beginning that so much of this was, this is where we really saw the radicalization of like virtue signaling. All this to say, like, it's really sad because I think these people who really, and I'm not talking about people who like just went along with it like for the sake of their job. Like there are plenty of people who were not vocal about it, who were just like, hey, you know what? Like I'm not gonna criticize you for not getting vaccinated or XYZ. I'm gonna get the vaccine because either I want to feel safe or I want to be back. I want to integrate myself back into society. I can't lose my job. Like I'm not talking about these people. I'm talking about the people who actively went out of their way to ostracize people, scream at people, exclude people out of their lives, treat people like shit because of this. And I know that those people will never apologize. They may even, I think a lot of them will even accept to this day, like that was all bullshit. Especially to the stuff with Fauci. Like I think I can't imagine. I mean, I shouldn't say I can't imagine because I think like 35% of the population is just retarded and they just go along with the shit no matter what. But like, I think most, a lot of people, I'm sure, watched this stuff with Fauci and something had to click. Something had to click where it's like, maybe this wasn't what they sold it to be. And because there's been a lot of moments since then where that has happened. And I can't I just can't wrap my head, like, as a logical person, I can't wrap my head around that and think like, oh, this makes sense, the way people reacted to this, like, and people can just like still still drink the Kool-Aid after all this. Like it baffles me that people can do that. And I don't know, even if they were able to see the error of their ways, they won't apologize because in their mind they'll think, well, it was such a crazy time and it was the only option. Or maybe they're even willing to admit that it was just the more comfortable option. And, I think there are people that got radicalized even more than I did. And this played a huge role in it. How people treated. I guess that's kind of just that's the vibe I wanted to bring to the episode today. Is, and I still say to this day, like, fuck you. Fuck you. You are a piece of shit. If you were one of these people, if you were one of my family members, if you're one of the people who used to be friends with me and you treated me like shit because of something that a personal choice that I made, go fuck yourself. Fuck you. Fuck you. How about this, huh? That's for you. You fucking piece of shit. You disgraceful human being for treating somebody like crap because of their personal choice that they made. Fuck you. You are a fucking piece of shit. You should feel shitty every day. When you see this COVID stuff, when you see this stuff play out, you should feel the way people felt when they looked at Fauci. The way Fauci, I mean, he's a fucking monster and a sociopath, but you could tell there were parts of that interrogation, that hearing where you could just tell he's like, oh, fuck, I look really bad. You should feel at least a semblance of that. You should feel guilty as fuck for how you treated people, how you treated your family members, your loved ones, your friends, over a personal choice, over something that we now know is nothing. And look, I'm not a scientist by any means. I'm not a medical person, but I will say anecdotally, every person I know that got that vaccine has gotten COVID like 5-7 times, at least. Like, they're the people that to this day you still hear like, yeah, they got COVID again. I got COVID one time. I think like a year within that first year that this all happened. And look, it was awful. It was shitty. Like, I'm not going to sit here and downplay how it was. There are people who didn't get affected at all, really. But like, yeah, that shit took me out for like a day or two. You know what? Day 3, I was back to work. I was fine. I felt fine. I felt great. The taste was probably the thing that was still lingering for a couple days, but that went away eventually too. And I never got it again. And like, you know, I'm a homebody. Like, I'm not really one that's like going out and partying or doing all this stuff, right? But like even the people I know that did, they only got, you know, they maybe got COVID 1 or 2 times. The people who got vaccinated, the people who were like in line, one of the boosters, got like every single shot. Like, I know family members, like they would be like, you know, group texting each other like, hey, you getting the booster? You doing this? Like the social parasite that what COVID became, it was terror. It was just insane. It was insane to me. It was like, you're really just going along with this. It's like, I don't get, it's like people are like, they're like walking satellite probes. Like they intake a signal. They're like, okay, I got the signal. I have to go do this thing. And I have to tell everybody that they have to do it. I have to make sure everybody else is, you know, on board with this. And we're just going to do this. We're not going to think about any consequences. We're not going to think if this logically makes any sense. Like, hey, you know, maybe something that isn't even a vaccine, is like, you know, they might have to tweak something. Like if I built a car, if I was the first person to, you know, the Wright brothers, if I built a plane and I was like, okay, this is ready to go. Like, everybody can just go ahead and fly this. That would be moronic. You'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, no, we have to like test this. We have to see how this works out. And, you know, obviously medicine's a little not quite a 1-to-1 with like the plane, but like, come on, man. Like we're going to need some time to be able to figure out, like, is this not only effective, but is it safe? And, you know, there's been a lot of evidence that's come out since then where that, like, it's very clearly not the case. That's very clearly not the case, of what's going on. So I've been ranting on this for like 40 minutes, so I'll wrap up, but like on that topic. But, you know, I just want to say, fuck those people. And like, if you're listening and you're one of those people, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck if you're offended. Because you know what? Like, this shit like really caused me a lot of strife, and really caused a lot of people strife. Like, it caused me to really like think, like, am I just a fucking piece of shit? Like, because this is the signal I'm getting from everyone I know, is that like, I'm a piece of shit for not getting this experimental vaccine that didn't even end up working. Like, the fact that I just didn't go along with it made me a piece of shit. And like, I truly like, I reached out to people and I was like, am I just this fucking awful person for not doing this? And it turns out, you know, there are a lot of people who have my thought process too, who are like, fuck, like, no, like there's nothing wrong with like thinking that like maybe this isn't a good idea. And, you know, I think, like I said, today in 2026, I think a lot of the people that were all on that shit, when COVID comes up, they just kind of get quiet. And the reason they kind of get quiet, the reason they're not still over here saying, well, it did actually work, and we actually did need to do this. The reason that they get quiet is because they know they did something really awful. They treated people like absolute garbage, and they should feel awful. And go fuck yourself. That's how I feel. Okay, let's there are a couple more things I wanted to. That kind of took up a lot of time, so I don't think we'll get to everything, but I did at least want to I don't really know if I want to get into that. I mean, so the Iowa Libertarian candidates appealed. Let me just go over this real quick. I mean, there isn't really a whole lot to say on it, but like, you know, the Iowa Libertarians did, I think last Tuesday, give an appeal to their, or, you know, tried to appeal that the decision that they weren't allowed to be in the race, and it was once again denied. And, you know, I've already said this before in another episode, so I won't get into it too much, but I think this just, you know, clearly once again shows that there is this pattern of corruption in the Iowa government. Like, you know, I feel like they could take this all the way up and they would still at the end of the day say, no, you can't do this. Not even, you know, Julie, I can't remember her last name, or Julette. I think it was it was the lieutenant governor, libertarian candidate. They're never going to give her a chance to be able to resubmit the thing that they told her she didn't have to. The person who, you know, told her she didn't have to is never going to face any consequences. And you know, the whole thing with Marco Battaglia, which I know I keep saying it, we are going to get him an interview. The studio's been under construction for a while. I'm unemployed. If someone wants to like PayPal me $50, I'll get that studio set up immediately. But that probably won't happen. Broke bitches, broke cheap ass bitches. What the fuck, man? No, I'm kidding. But you know, Marco, the discrepancy with his name, like, even though we have Robert Sand going by Rob Sand, even though we have JD Vance, who that's not even his, you know, legal name, but he's going by that and he's still going to be on the ballot. The fact that they're just going to apply this standard to someone else and not apply it to another, like, this is, you know, and this ties back into the COVID thing. This is what I'm talking about when like government officials can never be truly held accountable. They just like, the system is going to continue to do what it does. It's going to continue to serve the people that it wants to serve. And they're going to see people like the libertarians who, you know, I don't think the Libertarian Party is perfect by any means. I think it has its own set of problems. That's why I just consider myself, you know, pure anarcho-capitalist. But, you know, the fact that they are, you know, going to put this much push on an outside party, on outsiders, is really appalling. And Rob Sand, who we're going to talk about, I mean, his auditor's office, he himself didn't, you know, conduct it because he, you know, that's a conflict of interest. I'm glad they at least did that. But I mean, his very office is going to put this scrutiny on the name of Marco Battaglia. But then when it comes to the person who runs the auditor's office, they're going to look the other way. And this is just a clear, you know, Rob Sand can talk all day about how he wants to rid the corruption. It's like, yeah, that's not a very good sign, dude. Like, you can talk about that, and I really hope he does it. But like, if you're not even willing to apply the same standard that you're going to you know, Marco Battaglia to yourself, that's problematic. I mean, that's really just like the nature of government playing out. And like, you better have like if you're going to sell people on that, you better have like a really real concrete plan on that. But anyways, and speaking of Rob Sand, let's get into this. This article here. Democrat Rob Sand calls for social media age limit in kids' tech safety plan. Goody. So now we have the government involved in, you know, guiding children on, you know, what they can and can't do on technology. And, you know, they love to do this, right? And they have their reasonings for it. They're like, oh, this technology is so awful to kids and what have you. And there's probably an argument to that, right? Like, I can understand, like, especially with, like, I know, like, the like Instagram, they had the thing where they knew that it was like negatively, affecting teenage girls because of like the whole body image thing, right? And they didn't really do anything about it. But the problem, again, like with all these things, is just assuming that the government is going to be able to do a better job with this. And it's not. I kind of related, kind of not. Like, I think about the porn thing, right? Like how these websites now, they've really upped the restrictions on these websites. They're like, hey, you need to, like, I know in like certain states with Pornhub, like they did all, pass all this legislator where it was like, hey, you need to like upload your ID and do this kind of stuff, right? The thing is, what ends up happening then is then you just have other porn sites pop up with the same content. And it's like, okay, like you're really just like, in a way, you're almost exasperating the problem, because you're like, hey, we want to like curb the creation of pornography. And then in effect, people just end up creating more pornography and distributing more of it through other websites. And it's like, okay, you're literally doing the opposite of what you set out to do. And this happens time and time again with government programs. This is kind of just the end result. But what let's just get into the article. But like what Rob Sam seems to want to do is something very similar. He wants to control how social media goes to children. And not only does he think he can do it well, which he probably can't, but I guess we'll get into the article. We'll see if he actually has a plan. I'd be interested. I kind of just skimmed the article. I haven't really read the whole thing, so I guess it'll be interesting to see if that's the case. But at the end of the day, this is something that the parent should be doing. The parent 100% should be the one that is supervising this, making these decisions. Robson, even in the article, describes how when he and his family have time together, they like put away the tech and like they have like board games. And like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great example of a parent doing the job that they're supposed to. And instead of, leaving it up to that, government officials have to step in as the role of parent. People are going to think this is a stretch, but like we saw this play out in the Soviet Union, where the Soviet Union literally came in between the child and the parent to the point where children were turning in their parents to be, subjected to the awful things that the KGB did in that time frame. And, this is is Rob Sam proposing to throw parents in prison for going outside of these restrictions? No. Is that a possibility? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not with Rob Sam, but like, is it down the line possibility where, we have these restrictions set up where it's like, okay, we really need to restrict these adolescents from social media, and parents are like, I don't really care. I'm gonna, I'll just put in my own shit that says I'm over 16 or whatever and let my child do it anyway. Like, are those parents going to, face consequences? And, this kind of reminds me of like the whole Catholic, like all these like government approaches to things like this. Like, it just reminds me of the Catholic shit. So like, it's like, okay, we're just going to restrict everything. We're just going to take everything away. We're just going to block it. No. I don't know. I think it might be better to like educate your kids, to maybe sit them down one day. I don't know what age that is. I'm not a parent, but like, I think it would make a lot more sense to say, hey, kid, there are these really awful things out there. There's pornography. There's, social media platforms that are depicting things in a way that's unrealistic. And, you just got to be able to learn, like, you just have to learn, like, okay, this is how, these things work. This is how they interact with your brain. This is going to be your response. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that these things aren't real life. Like most women don't actually go online in a bikini and twerk their ass and have an OnlyFans. Like this is a very small percentage. Like most women don't want to be treated like that. Right. And things like that. I think it's a lot better to like actually teach your child, have them prepare for the world, in a way that makes sense, as opposed to just being a government and just saying we're just going to take this away. Going back to COVID, look how that worked out when the government said, hey, your kid needs to wear a mask. The developmental issues that arose because of that. How kids were delayed in that because I remember hearing studies where like there was this very critical age where it's like you actually need to be able to see other children's faces, like your peers' faces, as a developmental thing, as like a social developmental thing. And then when you're actively taking that away, because just like in this scenario, like the government thinks, oh, we know what we're doing. We know what's best for everyone. And that had like really dire consequences. And I mean, is the social media stuff like on a smaller scale? Could also like these social media things, like they can be a real tool. They could really like help, young people advance in a way that, I mean, even my generation didn't have. Right. And like, why is that a bad thing? What? Because they might there's a chance that they might run into this stuff or use in this way. Like, I don't know, man. I think at the end of what ultimately should happen is the parents should take this role on. The government doesn't have a place in this. But anyways, let's just read some of this article before we even I'm getting a lot of myself. But my clicker works. Democrat gubernational. That's such a weird word. Gubernational. Democrat candidate Rob Sands said he supports banning social media for children under age 16, setting age verification and parental consent requirements on certain apps, and providing more safeguards for minors online, according to a kids' online safety policy platform released Monday. Now, I think a very legitimate question with this is like, why 16? This is kind of like the whole thing with the six, like going back to COVID, like with the 6 foot distance. Like, why? Like, I feel like if you're going to institute something, you should be able to give us an explanation. It doesn't really seem like he's able to give one. He's kind of just like picked this age where he's like 16. I don't know, like if it's based on like development or like, just where like you could say that. You could give us a reason, but like with so many of these things that Rob Sand wants to do, he doesn't really give reasons. He doesn't really give plans. He kind of just makes these blankets. He makes these blanket promises and these blanket statements. And he's like, okay, we're just going to do this and it's going to be fine. Anyways, the plan shared first with Iowa's Capitol Dispatch is focused on restricting and providing more parental oversight for social media and other online platforms as a way to ensure children stay safe online. Excuse me. Sand said Friday in an interview, as well as make sure Iowa youth are socializing and develop life skills offline. Again, I don't really understand why he's framing this like he's enabling parental oversight. I kind of doubt that's the case. There's already a private, option for this. There are things like, there's screen accountability apps. Like there's like porn apps that like, like anti-porn apps that like I use. There are things that like you can use that like already curb a lot of this stuff and like you curb social media. Like, so it seems kind of counterintuitive to me that he would just be like, oh, this is why we're doing it. It sounds more like he just wants to restrict things because that's what government does. He wants to make sure Iowa youth are socializing and developing. Like, what does that mean? Like, how does that play out? Like, what? You're just going to take away people's phones? You're just going to make it illegal for, you have to have a flip phone if you're under 16. Like, how is that going to play out? What? Kids don't they're not going to go home and play on the Xbox instead? Like you're not going to be able to control that, dude. Let's see. Sand said the influence of technology in children's lives have been a major concern as he raises his 2 sons, 19 and 12. He says the policies reflect both his considerations as a parent as well as research and reports showing the negative impacts on social media use on children's mental health. Again, fine, but like you're the one imposing these things. And like I said, what is it? down here, we play a lot of board games as a family. We have reunites, we hunt, we fish, we do activities that involve interacting with each other and finding ways to have fun that have existed for hundreds of years that actually build relationships and build confidence and build grit. A lot of this to me is just pointing us towards things that could be good for us when social media at the end of the day is conclusively, even from the social media company's own standards, bad for children. Now, again, we have an example of what should be happening, which is a parent stepping in and saying, okay, I assume he's like, okay, we're going to put down the phones, we're just not going to let them have a smartphone until this age. I think as a parent, you should be able to do that. I think, something I also just thought about, it's also interesting. This is a man who, is constantly putting things on social media, constantly interacting with the platforms in order to boost his campaign. But so that's okay. But when it's, I guess children can't vote, but kids have an influence still, right? If anything, on the future, you have an influence on the future, right? You're really going to tell me that you're willing to sacrifice that? Maybe he is. I kind of doubt it. Okay, let's go further down this article. Sand said he would model policy for Iowa on Utah's App Store accountability app, signed into law in 2025. The measure requires app stores run by companies like Apple and Google to verify users' ages before allowing them to download applications. It requires minors have parental consent in order to download apps requiring a term of service agreement. The law also requires parental consent for app and in-app purchases for minors' accounts. Again, this is something that you can do as a parent already. I don't see why we need to have a government program that's going to use tax dollars. You're going to use tax dollars in order to fund the legislation for this, to fund, I'm assuming, some kind of software that is going to maneuver around this. If the government isn't doing it, at the very least, you're going to pay for legislation that's going to enable this to happen. This just in the face of private options that we already have, this just seems like a waste. The Utah law is being challenged in federal court by Computer and Communications Industry Association, which says the measure is a violation of the First Amendment because it would impact access to apps outside of social media like email and ebooks. That's a very good point. Is there really anything else? I know I was trying to find an article, but they only had it on the Des Moines Register, and I'm not paying for that shit. Where they were doing restrictions on the AI stuff. When is this article from? Is this from 3 days ago? And I think that was from today. So again, I don't subscribe. I'm not paying the Des Moines Register to read their bullshit. Sorry. If you want that from me, buy me a subscription and I will read the Des Moines Register. Sand also praised Reynolds, the current Republican governor, for the 2025 law setting statewide minimum policies banning the use of cell phones in classrooms, and said he believes that issues an area which he could find common ground with Republicans. Oh, of course. Yeah, I think that's enough from that article. That's really telling as well. We already criticized that previously in the podcast, how draconian that is, where you're just taking it's the same thing. You're subverting government policy, government action, because you deem it to be the best, and going around what parents want. And it's kind of weird. Again, these options are all things that parents already have. They can already do these things. So I don't really understand. I honestly, I don't even really understand what the point is. How would that, okay, so you're going to create things in Utah. So you have to have age verification in that state, in order to download certain apps. So I'm assuming if you're under 16, you can't download Facebook or Instagram or something like that. Okay. Then you just have what, people had in my day, when I was a kid, where they would just have their parent do it. They just be okay, hey. And the parent who doesn't give a fuck, they're hey, mom, I want to play San Andreas and I'm 10 years old. The mom will just go get it for them. They don't give a fuck. This isn't going to do anything against that. You're just doing more damage than you're actually helping people. the kids who, would actually maybe, benefit from a lot of these things that he's restricting, he's going to fuck them over. And, the stupid parents who are just like, oh, government good. The same people that, we just shit on for, ostracizing people for COVID stuff. Like, those same people are now going to just say like, oh, my kid can't do this. Even though, like, social media, for all its flaws, teaches people a lot of stuff. Like, there's a lot of things that can be learned through those platforms. And I don't know. I just see this as another example of government overstep. And, I don't know. It's all bad, dude. It's all bad. Zach Lane, I don't get that, dude. His name is spelled Lahn, and it's pronounced Lane. Dude, change your name, bro. I don't know. Rob Sand did it. Why can't you do it? Rob isn't going by Robert Sand. I don't know, man. Get rid of one letter and put another in. Although, you have a name that looks like fucking German or something. Like, nobody's gonna vote for that. I think Rob Sand is gonna win. If anything, by default of name recognizability and like ease of name, like Rob Sand, like that's really like, clean, off the cusp. Like, there's no struggle with that. Zach Zach what? Like, that right there. I mean, that time and again is almost kind of more of an indicator of who's gonna win than like any of their policies. Like, it's stupid shit like that, right? I know there was that video back in the day where like people were like, I think it was 2012 election, and people were voting for Obama. Like, there were Obama, supporters, voters, and they asked them like, basic government questions, and they had no fucking clue. And then they asked them about like what was her name? I can't remember her name, but John McCain's VP. The controversy with like her daughter being pregnant, and they knew everything about that. And it's like, people are just dumb, man. Like, that's if people were smart, we wouldn't have these problems. People are retarded. That's my closing statement. People are retarded. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in and listening and watching and all that. We have more content coming down the pipeline. I am doing more movie review stuff. So, I'm putting out my first like video essay on the Odyssey, next week. So I'm really looking forward to that. And guys, yeah, keep supporting the podcast, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. So